My wife cheated on me with our business partner, stole $250, $0 of company funds, then turned around and sued me for half our property. Turns out she's been planning her escape for years. I never thought I'd be the guy telling a story like this, but here I am. It all started with what seemed like small cracks in a perfect picture, but those cracks turned into a full-blown nightmare faster than I could blink. The most shocking part: the moment I found out my wife, Lisa, had been cheating on me with our business partner, Mark, and on top of that, she stole $250,000 from our company. That's right, 250, zero gone just like that. And the crazy part, she's been planning her escape for years, all while pretending everything was fine. Lisa and I had been together for over 10 years. We met in college, got married shortly after, and built a small but successful business together. Things looked good from the outside. She was charming, confident, always seemed to have everything under control. But I started noticing the little things: her phone always buzzing at odd hours, secretive texts, a sudden obsession with her appearance more than usual. I brushed it off at first. I convinced myself she was just trying to keep herself attractive, or maybe she was stressed with work. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The first real sign came about 6 months ago. I noticed her acting weird around Mark, our business partner. They'd have these quick, secretive conversations in her office, whispering and giggling like teenagers. She'd come home late, smelling of perfume I didn't recognize, and her excuses were always flimsy. She'd say she was working late, meeting with clients, or just catching up with friends. But I could see the flicker in her eyes when she lied. It was like she was scared I'd find out. Then came the financial discrepancies. I'm not an idiot. I manage the books myself. I started noticing some strange entries, small withdrawals here and there, unaccounted expenses, and oddly, a pattern of large transfers to an account I didn't recognize. At first, I thought it was just some kind of accounting mistake or maybe her personal expenses. But when I dug deeper, I found out it was money being siphoned off from our company account. That's when I realized she was stealing from us. And the worst part, she was doing it with Mark's help. I confronted her about the financial irregularities. Her reaction was a mix of denial and anger. She called me paranoid, accused me of distrust, said I was overreacting, but I knew better. I had the evidence: bank statements, emails, and even some texts from Mark that I managed to extract from her phone. They were planning something. I could tell. It was clear she'd been planning her escape for a long time. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. How could the woman I loved, the woman I trusted with everything, betray me like this? I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat there going over everything. The lies, the stolen money, the secret meetings. My mind kept racing. I felt a mixture of anger, betrayal, and sadness so intense it was almost physical. I thought about all those years, the plans we made, the future we talked about. And then I thought about her lying to my face, sneaking around, and ultimately betraying me for Mark and her own selfish needs. It was like discovering a whole different person, someone I didn't recognize. That's when I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew I couldn't do it without a plan. I wanted answers, but I also wanted to catch her in the act if I could. I started gathering more evidence, saving emails, recording her phone conversations when I could. I wanted to be ready. I didn't want to be again. I had no idea what I'd do if she everything or tried to spin it. But I knew one thing: this wasn't just a fling or a mistake. This was a full-blown betrayal, and I was done being the fool. The next day, I scheduled a meeting. I told her I knew everything about the affair, the stolen money, everything. Her face twisted into a sneer, and she started lying again, saying I was crazy, that I was imagining things, that Mark was just a friend, that I was paranoid. But I had enough. I laid out the evidence on the table, and her mask cracked. She looked furious, then scared, then angry, all in the same breath. That's when I realized this was bigger than I thought. She wasn't just cheating. She was planning her escape, and she'd been doing it for years. I felt my world shattering right there. I was furious, devastated, and strangely, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew I had to act fast, not just to save what was left of my business, but to protect myself from whatever she might do next. I didn't trust her anymore, not one bit. And I knew one thing for sure, she was not going to get away with this, not without paying a price. After that confrontation, everything changed. I could see the way her eyes darted around, trying to find a way out of the mess she'd created. She was furious, but there was also a flicker of panic. I could tell she hadn't expected me to be this prepared, to have all the evidence laid out so clearly. She tried to deny everything at first, throwing out those typical lies: "You're overreacting. This is all a misunderstanding. Mark and I are just friends." But I wasn't buying it anymore. I had proof. The emails, the bank statements, the text messages. Everything pointed to her betrayal, and I wasn't going to let her spin her way out of it. It was then that I decided I had to take control of the situation. I couldn't just confront her and hope she'd come clean. I needed to know exactly how deep this went, how much she'd stolen, and what her plans were for disappearing. So I started digging into her financials more thoroughly. I hired a private investigator just to confirm what I already suspected. She'd been funneling money into some secret account for years. I found out she transferred that $250, $0 from our company account into her personal account, and it was all hidden behind shell companies and fake invoices. She planned this for a long time. Meanwhile, her attitude was getting worse. She started throwing tantrums, calling me paranoid, accusing me of spying on her. She said I was ruining everything, that I was controlling and jealous. She even claimed she was the victim, that I was just jealous of Mark, or that I didn't trust her because I was insecure. But I knew better. This wasn't about jealousy. This was about betrayal, greed, and a woman who was willing to destroy everything we built for her own selfish reasons. I could see the cracks in her, and I knew I had to act fast before she managed to cover her tracks even more. One night, I caught her red-handed trying to delete some emails from her laptop. She was frantically typing away, her fingers flying over the keyboard like her life depended on it. I snuck into her office and saw her deleting files, trying to wipe away her tracks. That was the moment I realized she might be planning to run. She was desperate to erase her footprints. I grabbed her by the arm and told her I knew everything about the affair, the money, and her plans to escape. Her face went pale, and for a second I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Then she snapped, calling me a jealous, paranoid husband who was ruining her life. I didn't care. I called her bluff. I told her I was done playing her game. I told her I was going to take everything, our house, our savings, whatever she was trying to hide, and make sure she paid for what she did. I told her I was going to expose her to everyone, including the authorities if I had to. That's when she started crying, but not because she was sorry. No, it was because she knew I was serious. She kept insisting she loved me, saying it was all a mistake, that she'd never cheat or steal from me, but I knew better. The woman I married was gone. She was just a con artist in a woman's body, and I was finally seeing her for what she really was. That night I stayed up late, going through her files and emails, documenting everything. I contacted a lawyer and a financial advisor. I wanted to be ready for whatever was coming next, not just to protect myself, but to make sure she couldn't get away with this. I also started secretly recording her, just in case I needed proof of her trying to manipulate or threaten me further. I felt like I was in some kind of war, and I had to be prepared for the worst. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. I wasn't going to let her walk away with our money or our life. I was going to fight for what's mine, what we built together. I decided I'd file for divorce, but more than that, I was going to go after her legally for the theft and breach of trust. I wanted her to face the consequences. I knew this wasn't just about the money anymore, it was about respect and integrity. I'd been blind for so long, but now I saw everything clearly, and I was done being the victim. I was going to make her pay, one way or another. After I made the decision to move forward legally, everything shifted into high gear. I contacted my lawyer immediately, someone I'd trusted for years but hadn't needed much from until now. I laid everything out: the affair, the stolen money, her attempts to erase evidence, her threats, and her lies. The lawyer was sharp, asked the right questions, and advised me to gather all possible proof. I already had a mountain of evidence: emails, bank statements, recordings, and I started organizing it all. While I was doing that, Lisa's attitude grew even more hostile. She started accusing me of spying, of trying to ruin her, and even of cheating myself. She told mutual friends I was paranoid, that I was controlling, and that I was making her life miserable. But I knew she was just trying to spin the story because she was panicking. The more I dug into her financials, the more I uncovered shell companies, fake invoices, transfers that showed she'd been planning her exit for years. She'd been sneaking around, lying to everyone, even to her own family. One day, I caught her trying to transfer some of the last remaining funds out of the country. She was frantically trying to hide her assets, probably thinking she could just run away and start fresh somewhere else. That's when I realized she wasn't just a cheat and a thief. She was a con artist. She planned this entire scheme for years, and I'd been blind to it for so long. She was trying to cover her tracks, but I had enough evidence to blow the whole thing open. I went straight to the lawyer with everything. Meanwhile, she was still putting on her fake innocent act, crying and claiming she loved me, saying she'd never do anything to hurt me. But it was all a lie. I could see through it now. She'd been lying to my face for months, maybe years. I started to feel a strange mix of anger and sadness. Anger that she'd betrayed me so thoroughly, and sadness because I still loved her. Or at least I thought I did. But love doesn't mean blind trust, and I was done being naive. I realized she'd been planning her escape for a long time, and I'd been too stupid to see it. The real shock came when I finally confronted her again, after discovering she'd hidden a significant chunk of our savings in offshore accounts. I told her I knew everything about the affair, the money, her plans. Her reaction was to explode. She called me jealous, controlling, paranoid again. She insisted she was innocent, that I was just making up stories because I didn't trust her. But I had the proof, and I wasn't backing down anymore. I told her I was going to take her to court, get a divorce, and make sure she paid for her lies and theft. She looked at me with pure hatred, then sneered and said I'd regret this. But I wasn't scared anymore. I knew I had the upper hand. I'd been betrayed, yes, but I was also finally in control. I decided I'd fight for everything. Our house, our savings, even her share of the business if I had to. I wasn't going to let her walk away. With my life's work and her lies, I was done being a victim. From that moment on, I was determined to see her pay for what she'd done. I started making arrangements to freeze her accounts and notify the authorities about her illegal transfers. I was ready to bring everything out into the open, to expose her for the manipulative liar she'd become. The more I uncovered, the more I realized she'd been planning her departure for years, and I had no intention of letting her slip away without consequences. It was as if a switch had flipped in me. I was no longer the naive husband she thought she could fool. I was done being played. I was going to fight back, and I was going to win. I couldn't sleep most nights after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the lies, the betrayal. I kept replaying everything, trying to make sense of how someone I trusted so completely could turn into this con artist. I'd built a life with her, and she'd thrown it all away for Mark and her greed. The pain was sharp, but I knew I had to stay strong. I had to get through this, not just for myself, but for the future I still wanted to salvage, even if it meant starting over from nothing. I was determined to make her regret what she'd done, if not for my sake, then for the truth. By the time I had all my ducks in a row, legal documents, evidence, and a clear plan, things moved fast. I filed for divorce, citing not just irreconcilable differences but also the financial misconduct and betrayal. I wanted her to face the full weight of her actions. The court process was brutal. She fought back with everything she had, claiming I was trying to ruin her, that she was the victim, that everything was just a misunderstanding. But I had the proof. Every email, every bank transfer, every lie she'd told. Her lawyers tried to spin it, claiming she was innocent, that the money was a gift, or that I was trying to control her. She even went as far as to accuse me of cheating, trying to tarnish my reputation. Honestly, I didn't care about her accusations anymore. I just wanted the truth to come out. I knew she was planning to disappear, and I was determined to stop her. I hired a private investigator to follow her movements just in case she tried to run. Turns out she was planning to leave the country with a big chunk of the stolen money. One day I got a call from my pie. She booked a flight to Mexico with a suitcase full of cash and a fake ID. I was furious. That was the moment I realized she'd been planning her escape for years and I'd been blind to it. I immediately contacted the authorities and they moved quickly to intercept her. She was arrested at the airport trying to board her flight. I watched her being taken away in handcuffs, and I felt a strange mixture of relief and anger. Relief that she was finally caught, and anger because she'd betrayed me, our marriage, everything we built, for her own selfish greed. The fallout was intense. She accused me of everything under the sun, saying I was abusive, controlling, that I'd ruined her life. But the court saw through her lies. The evidence was overwhelming. She was found guilty of embezzling, fraud, and conspiracy to escape with stolen funds. I got most of the money back, though she had hidden quite a bit and some of it was still out of reach. But the biggest blow was realizing how much damage she'd done, not just financially but emotionally. I felt like I'd lost a part of myself in all of this. Meanwhile, I was left to pick up the pieces. The house, the business, the trust, all shattered. I had to start over, rebuild not just my finances but my sense of security. I went through a phase of intense anger, crying in the shower, screaming at the universe for how unfair it all was. But eventually, I started to focus on myself. I realized I'd been naive, trusting her blindly, believing in the fairy tale that marriage was supposed to be. Now I saw clearly. Some people are just liars, con artists, and manipulators who will do anything to get what they want. The hardest part was accepting that I might never fully trust again. But I also knew I couldn't live in the past. I had to move forward, learn from my mistakes, and rebuild my life. I sold the house, cut ties with most of my friends who'd been caught off guard by her lies, and started therapy to deal with the emotional scars. It's been a long road, but I've come to realize that revenge isn't just about getting even. It's about reclaiming your life after everything has been ripped apart. Looking back, I feel a mix of anger and relief. Anger at her betrayal, but relief that I finally see what she truly was. I learned that trust is fragile, something that can be shattered in a moment by someone you thought loved you. And I learned that sometimes the only way to survive is to fight back, to expose the lies, and to take control of your own future. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone in a similar situation, it's this: don't ignore the signs. Don't let someone's charm blind you. And most importantly, don't be afraid to stand up for yourself, even when it feels like the whole world is falling apart. After everything that happened, I found myself in a strange place, part relief, part emptiness. The court case was finally over. Her arrest was a turning point, but the scars ran deep. I spent weeks trying to piece my life back together, dealing with the aftermath of her betrayal and trying to understand how someone I loved could become so completely unrecognizable. The house was sold, the business was in ruins, and I was left with nothing but the lessons I'd learned, lessons that came at a high cost. I started focusing on myself more seriously, went to therapy, read a lot about trust, betrayal, and rebuilding after trauma. I realized that I'd been naive to think marriage was a safe haven, that everyone was honest and good. Now I knew better. Some people are just out for themselves and they'll lie, cheat, and steal to get what they want. I also learned that revenge, real justice, isn't about petty payback. It's about making sure the person who wronged you faces the consequences and that you reclaim your power. I decided to cut ties with Lisa completely. No more contact, no more explanations, no more trying to understand her twisted logic. The only thing I wanted was to move on. I focused on rebuilding my career, investing in new projects, and reconnecting with friends and family who supported me through all this. I also took up new hobbies, working out, learning to cook, traveling alone. I needed to remind myself that life still had meaning even after such a devastating betrayal. One thing I didn't expect was how much the betrayal changed my view on money. I always thought I was smart with finances, built a decent nest egg, kept a tight grip on expenses. But her theft opened my eyes to how vulnerable I'd been. I started learning about asset protection, legal safeguards, and how to better safeguard what I have. I even hired a financial advisor to help me restructure my assets so I wouldn't be caught off guard again. It's a strange feeling, realizing that trust in someone else's honesty can be so fragile and that you need to be proactive to protect yourself. In the end, I think I've come out of this stronger, even if battered. I've learned that sometimes life throws you a curveball you never saw coming. That betrayal can come from the most unexpected places, and it's up to you to decide whether you let it destroy you or use it as a catalyst for growth. I've chosen the latter. I want to rebuild, not just my finances, but my confidence, my sense of security, and my ability to trust again, but smarter this time. If I could give one piece of advice to anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, it's this: be vigilant. Trust is important, but it's also fragile. Keep your eyes open, protect your assets, and don't ignore the warning signs. And most of all, don't let the betrayal define you. You're stronger than the pain, and you can rebuild a life that's better and more honest than before. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Trust me, I've been through hell and back, and I'm still standing. Looking back now, I realize that this ordeal has changed me in ways I never expected. I used to think that trust was the foundation of everything: marriage, friendship, business. But I've learned that trust is fragile, and it can be shattered in a heartbeat if you're not careful. The betrayal from Lisa was a wake-up call I never wanted, but it forced me to everything I thought I knew about loyalty and honesty. The biggest lesson I've taken away is that no amount of love or history can make someone immune to greed or deception. People can surprise you in the worst ways, and sometimes the only way to protect yourself is to stay vigilant. I had to learn to trust again, but differently, by setting boundaries, protecting my assets, and keeping a close eye on people who might have their own agendas. That's not being paranoid, that's being smart. I also learned that revenge isn't about getting even, but about reclaiming your power. I didn't want her to walk away feeling victorious, and I certainly didn't want her to think she could destroy me and get away with it. So I fought legally, financially, emotionally, and I made sure she paid the price for her lies, her theft, her betrayal. It wasn't just about the money. It was about standing up for myself, proving that I wouldn't be a victim forever. Today, I stand here not as the broken husband I once was, but as someone who's rebuilt piece by piece. I still carry the scars, but I also carry a newfound resilience. I've learned that life can throw you into chaos, but you have a choice. You can let it defeat you, or you can use it as fuel to grow stronger. I chose the latter. I focus on my future now, not on what I lost. To anyone who finds themselves in a similar situation, trust your instincts, protect your assets, and don't be afraid to fight for what's yours. Betrayal cuts deep, but it doesn't have to define you. You can come out the other side with a clearer mind and a stronger heart. Life isn't about avoiding pain. It's about learning how to survive it and come out better on the other side. That's what I've done, and I hope my story can serve as a reminder that even in our darkest moments, there's hope for a new beginning.